PEP Radio is a part of the Pennsylvania Equality Project that plays music, news, and weather, actively advocating for the LGBTQ+ and disabled since 2024.
PEP Radio, available on Live 365, Roku, Alexa, and at paequality.com.
Here at Gay SA Radio, we're very happy to welcome the Othering podcast to our airwaves. Catch the show every Thursday at noon CAT, bringing fresh voices and compelling conversations straight to you.
Head over to gsaradio.stream to find out how you can tune in and become part of our family. Don't miss it, only on Gay SA Radio, where you are family.
One man and one woman join forces to rid the world
What are you doing?
of inequality and fascism.
Seriously?
I'm trying I'm trying to do a promo here.
For whom? What are you doing?
Welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory. All right, today we are talking to Jessie. Jessie is a writer, illustrator, and was born in Arizona, raised in Kentucky and Indiana. She's always had an interest and passion for social justice and disability justice because both of her parents were disabled. Since she was young, she's loved art in all forms, from books to movies to paintings, music, and illustration. And now her illustration and writings have a cozy energy that she's carried over into her stickers, which is Little Shop of Stickers, highly recommended.
Yes.
And she designs and draws emotional support stickers for that business. She has recently learned that she is disabled within the last couple of years. She is diagnosed with ADHD in 2024, currently seeking an autism evaluation, and has CPTSD, depression, and anxiety. When she's not creating, she loves to read, paint, bake, spend time with family, watch movies, and learn. Welcome, Jessie. It's great to
welcome.
have you. And you may remember her from the Halloween episode if you happen to listen to that.
Which was awesome too. That was really fun. So let's get back into the conversation we were having. So you have ADHD, ADD, ADHD. How did you get that diagnosis?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So, first started years ago in actually around 2016 or 2017. And I had a friend at the time we were dating. Later, we would just go back to being friends. We were long distance dating, and they were talking about their autism. And I told them a story about how all my life I have noticed that if I am watching a movie or listening to a song and there is breathing, like, you know how sometimes they'll do that to build tension or help to build the atmosphere of a scene or a song. It took me years of my life to stop matching my breathing to that. When I was a kid, it was impossible. I would immediately breathe and it would make me anxious and often short of breath. And when I told them that, my friend said, in a very supportive way, not trying to tell me what I was, said, that's a neurodivergent trait. And the indication that you are having such a struggle to not match that's the part that's neurodivergent. Like, you should just do what you will. And then I also mentioned something about being hypermobile, and they were like, that's also often related to. So I just sat on that for a few years. I talked to my therapists about it, but I didn't really seek an autism evaluation or ADHD or anything like that. I didn't make the connection. But then, of course, a lot of people were sharing online about it. Fast forward to 2019, and I moved in with a friend's parents. And my friend and her brother both had ADHD diagnoses. And she says to me one day, I said something about, I don't even remember how the conversation started, as I'm sure many like this are. But we were talking about how I would pause movies, and it was, if I'm not watching a movie in the theater, I'm not watching that movie from beginning to end without pausing it at least 3 times. Okay, we're getting distracted, we need water, we need snacks.
Yep.
And my friend said, well, yeah, it's just an ADHD thing. Like, I get it. And I said, I don't have ADHD. And she stopped and she goes, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you knew we're an ADHD family because me and my brother have ADHD. So like we just thought that you were ADHD too. And I was like, but it made me think. So once my life was a little bit more stable mentally, and I had health insurance again, and I was in therapy, I sought out a psychiatrist. Now, of course, this didn't happen until 2024. At this point, I had been dealing with panic attacks for a few years. My anxiety was through the roof. Many people experienced this because of COVID. It just exacerbated a lot of things for many of us. And so in 2024, I had a psychiatrist and I asked for an ADHD evaluation. And they set me up. I had to go into the office and I had to sit it on the little computer and do the little clicker. And it was the most annoying 20 minutes of my recent memory. As soon as it started, I was like, I don't fucking want to be. And that I was like, maybe I do have ADHD because this is making me want to throw this laptop on the floor. And I did that, and I come in to go over the results with my psychiatrist, and she tells me that on the scale I have light ADHD. And she's honest with me. She's like, if you don't want to take medication, you don't have to, but I can help you find a medication if you find medication. And I was honest with her, and I was like, all my life I am super sensitive to medications. I have side effects that often make the results I get not worth it. So I would like to, but it just kind of it changed everything. Like I was like, it made me so emotional. I'm still processing it. It's actually been almost a year exactly since I took the evaluation and got the results. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting how it cracks you open and it makes you question your entire life, every second of your entire life. It's part of it comes into perspective and then part of it gets fuzzier.
Yep. Yes. It was kind of the same way when my therapist said, by the way, you've got, you're a strong candidate for ADHD and autism. And when she was saying that, my brain just went, aha. And it's just like, oh, that explains so much of the impulsive and overthinking type of, matchup where some things you're just like, oh, I just got to do it. And you don't think about it and you just do it. Mm-hmm. And then there's other times where you can't help but analyze it from every direction, every thought process, every gender, sex, everything. You're like, oh, an amoeba. Let's see what amoeba would do. And then you can actually make the decision. And it does kind of crack you open because you're just like, oh my God, all this time, this is why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you said you don't get you do get all the side effects from medication, so you don't like to take it. What's kind of your mechanism for helping with your ADHD since you don't do the medication, and how do you get through without having the same issues as before?
I love this question so much. So when I learned that I had ADHD, I was like, oh my gosh, a lot of these things that I do are already coping mechanisms, and I didn't even realize them. I had been self-medicating with cannabis for years. Okay. And I'm going to be real with you. I love that you guys are not censored, because when I first started smoking cannabis and was calling it weed, only calling it weed, I was like, I just want to smoke weed. I had graduated college and I had classic. I tried it in high school, but it wasn't around me. I smoked it one time in high school, and then me and my best friend wanted to smoke again. Couldn't find it anywhere. All those ads about how someone's going to offer you drugs all the time. Where?
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, I digress. So in college, of course, I get to my senior year, and through my mix of being kind of an overachiever, very high masking, high functioning, I got to my senior year, and I was one of those kids that had a really easy senior year because I'd done so I felt kind of bad because I'm watching all my peers scramble. Meanwhile, I'm cool, done with my classes for the day, and I don't have to work my part-time job today. So I would go over to my friend Amy's, and we would smoke and eat and hang out and talk. And I started to notice oh man, that stuff helps me focus. Dear reader, it would take her another 14 years to realize why it helps her focus.
Yes.
Because so many times, especially when I moved to Arizona and had access to medical marijuana, and you can start getting more specific strains. One time, I don't like the name of the strain, and I don't know if the strain exists anymore, but it was called green crack, and I understand why. Because I was like, oh, I'm going to smoke it and do some art and watch a movie. No, I smoked it and cleaned my whole apartment in 2 hours, and I'm not exaggerating. It sounds like a made up story. So I should have known then. But all this time I was like self-medicating. And then I also picked up something that I learned people call habit stacking, which is where you just do a bunch of stuff that's related at the same time to maintain your focus. And so those are the two main things for me. But I also have all kinds of other little things. Oh, if I walk in a room and I notice something else, just do it real fast if it's quick. If it's not quick, my other technique is just write it down. Don't make yourself do it right now if it's not quick. If it's going to interrupt your flow, just write it down. It's okay to come back to it later.
That's actually a really great idea, because sometimes, especially as the ADHD part, and comes anxiety with it, and so when the anxiety is hitting, sometimes it's really hard to focus or think of anything, and it's just like, oh my God, I got so much to do. I've got to do all of this. I've got to clean, or I got to cook. And so it's just like, even though you know that they're simple tasks, it gets ridiculously overwhelming in your brain. But being able to kind of write it down and just be like, well, I can do this between the hours of 4 and 6 or something like that. Kind of giving yourself a guide of when to do certain things, I think is a brilliant idea, and brilliant way to kind of help yourself calm down and not panic.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the first thing that usually comes to mind for me when I have things to do is panic.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. You're totally overwhelmed. And it's like, oh my God, what do I do? And being able to just kind of think for a second and stop and just be like, okay, is this simple, or is it a multi-day task? And break it down. Breaking it down makes a huge difference.
Yep.
I would also say having children makes a huge difference, because they can do it then when you're just not able to focus. Yes, exactly.
Did you have a lot of issues when you were a kid with the ADHD, even though you didn't know that's what it was, like with focusing in school or doing your chores?
Yes, and I flew under the radar because I learned how to be high masking and high functioning. It makes me emotional. I apologize if I get emotional.
Oh no.
Like, so unfortunately, my mother was mentally, emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive. My father was the exact opposite, but they divorced when I was 4 years old. We moved to Kentucky and Indiana. My mother was raising me. And at this point in the divorce, my father's diagnosed with schizophrenia, has been since he was 18. My mother had cerebral palsy, but when it came down to divorce and like who's going to take who, in their eyes, it was no question, because my father was schizophrenic.
Right.
And it probably is true. My dad, I don't know if he could have raised me, but he was the exact opposite of my mother. He was very loving, supportive. So not only was I dealing with being an undiagnosed ADHD kid, but I was dealing with a home life that made me frozen and immobile at school often. And what would happen is I would be daydreaming, and maladaptive daydreaming I still do it, but when I was a kid, that was like how I got through. And so I would be in school daydreaming. I loved school. I loved learning, loved books, so sometimes I would be like hyper focused on whatever we were doing. And that would kind of like carry me through when I did not do well in elementary school at times. But then other times I was doing so well that at one point in second grade that they talked to my family and they wanted me to just skip third grade entirely.
Wow.
And my family said no. And I'm actually really grateful that they did, because third grade turned out to be one of the most formative years of my childhood. It was just where I was becoming a lot more conscious of myself as a being. And I think it was a little bit late for me. Like, I see kids talking about it. I see other people that make funny videos about it, about becoming like super aware suddenly. And it happened for them when they were around the age of 4 or 5. That didn't happen for me until between the ages of 7 and 8. That's when it happened. And I did start doing a little bit better in school, but then I started falling off in other areas. Like, I was doing really well in like my reading and my English, but I was struggling in math. I was doing well in science, but I was struggling in music. I spent the entirety of third grade pretending to play the flute. And I don't know if it was the whole year. It might have just been like, how they break it up into semesters. I think it might have been just the first half of the year, but I spent like those 3-4 months from like August to December pretending that I could play the flute because my family was renting it and we were really poor. And I don't want to blame the teacher, because we all know teachers underpaid, overworked.
Yeah.
So I was pretending enough that I just flew under his radar. I think it could be easy to do. So we get to the concert, and he realizes, and he takes me backstage and tells me that I have to stay backstage, but I was relieved. So things like that kept happening. I would be doing well in one area and falling through the cracks in the other. I remember in 6th grade, I had changed schools because I was now in 6th grade. I'm not in elementary school, and I had gone to the same elementary school the whole time. So it was a new school. We're wearing uniforms, and my 6th grade teacher tells me, she's like, "You're reading at an 11th grade level. Like, you're doing great. Like, just keep going." And I remember being so surprised, but reading was an escape for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I definitely flew under the radar. That year, I definitely almost failed a class. They didn't do Fs, they did U's, and I don't remember what that stood for.
Unsatisfactory.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But somehow I scraped by enough to like pass 6th grade. But this was also the time at the end of 6th grade. Last day of 6th grade was my birthday, coincidentally. So I'm excited to get home from school. Get home from school, sitting in my uniform, watching TV. My mother's not home because she has finally gotten her Social Security disability after fighting for it for years. And listen, everybody deserves a vacation, even disabled people. I stand by that. But maybe the time to go on that vacation is not right when you get your Social Security and your kids are getting out of school.
Right.
Yeah.
She literally got Social Security and went to Mexico. I stand by this. If you want to use part of your Social Security to go on vacation, I'm not arguing with your right to do that. But I'm judging my mother a little bit because she did it immediately. Like, she didn't improve our living situation. We went hungry so many times, but she went to Mexico first. I digress once again. Anyway, that was the day that everything changed. And again, everything was thrown into a tailspin. But instead of like it kind of blowing up my symptoms, I became the golden child. I had figured out how to like maneuver my distractions. I thought everybody was getting distracted at school. I'm like, oh, you don't suddenly realize that you haven't been paying attention to what the teacher's saying for 10 minutes, like every day.
Right.
God.
So I just thought that I had figured out ways to do well in school that everybody else was doing. But yeah, 6th grade, last day of 6th grade, was the last morning that I lived with my mother, and we went, and custody things started happening, started staying with other family. And then I, for years, kind of ignored any time I felt like I needed something, and did really well in school so that people wouldn't bother me.
Yeah. Listening, sorry, but listening to that, some of that, it's just like, I did the same thing. Like, I struggled in math. Like, at first I was really good, and then I hit this rough patch where I just struggled hard. Like, I could not grasp any concept of math, but I was excellent in reading and writing. And, they would tell me you should write books, and you should be in basically a high school level type of thing. And partially it was because I escaped into books myself.
So I have a question, and maybe I should know this as a host of a show that talks about it all the time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So autistics, they tend to have like one specific thing that they're really, really good at, that they really, really love, like music or something like that. Does that kind of fall into the same thing with ADHD, and is that why? Because a few people I know that have ADHD match what you guys are saying. There's one specific subject that they really excel at, or one activity that they do all the time that they're really, really good at. And then there's other stuff they can't quite grasp.
Or
so I wonder if it's kind of similar to autism, where
and
you just kind of have that one item that you can do.
I think it is that case because
I think so too.
Based on listening to you, and basically it's like, oh my God, that was me. 3rd grade, I was horrible in math. I was excelling in science and reading. And, eventually I evened it out with math, but I too failed, I'm pretty sure, a class and ended up in like a remedial, some remedial classes. And they kept saying, why are you even here?
It was very confusing, people. At one point I was in like an after school group for the gifted kids.
Me too.
I'm sure they were like, what's going on with her?
Yeah, I was in gifted and talented and, the enriched reading and all of that stuff. And then it's like, I wasn't. And then they kept saying, why aren't you in it? And it was just like, but in some cases, I think the pressure of trying to be that golden kid and, maintain straight A's and all of that stuff, especially after you move, is really hard.
That was a big thing for me because when we moved in with my aunt and uncle, I was in a completely different town, a completely different school, much smaller. I went from a middle school that had hundreds of students for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to a school with a campus where you could start kindergarten at one end and graduate the other.
Wow.
I was
Yeah,
like,
that's a huge difference too.
what's happening here? And I was the oldest daughter. My older brother wasn't around. He had already been removed from my mother's care years ago, which should have been, people should have seen my older brother struggling and seen that something was going on. I have a lot of beef with the system, okay?
Yes.
I'm sure that you can relate to that.
Oh, yes.
I want to make sure I didn't cut you off, by the way.
Oh,
Did you
no.
finish your
You're
thought?
fine.
Okay,
Go
just
ahead.
want to make sure. And I remember in 6th grade, I told you I was doing so well. In the library one day, the librarian just tells me, hey, every time you finish reading a book, just fill out one of these slips. And it's distinctly possible she told me it was related to some sort of reading contest, but I didn't remember that because then some months later, there's just like an announcement and they're like, winner of the reading contest, Jesse Powell. And I was like, but I was delighted. I won I think I got like pizza vouchers. This was a common thing. And I was delighted because we went hungry so much. We got to use our pizza vouchers.
Yeah.
And I was so proud that I won something. And then would be like, but why am I getting an unsatisfactory? Like I would get my report card and just A in English, and, B in science, U in math. And just be like, I don't know what's happening. And then in junior high, I had a math teacher who he saw that I wanted to learn, and now I'm like, maybe he could kind of see like, oh, this is a kid with ADHD or something, and she's just not getting the help she needs. Because he helped me to get my first A in math. He met me where I was, answered my questions, and then I would go on to be like, you know what, I'm going to take the hard science class. I'm going to take chemistry because I love science, and that motivated me. And then I found out that chemistry was a lot like math. So I spent the year bringing home report cards that would have straight A's and then a C- in chemistry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it felt very high pressure because I grew up a poor kid, and my aunt and uncle had money that my mother never had. Definitely very middle class in the early 2000s, it seemed to me anyway. And my uncle would say, for every A that you get, I had 7 classes. For every A that you get $10. And if you get 7 A's, I'll give you $100. So I would come home. One time I came home, just thinking about it gives me anxiety again. I came home from theater practice one time, and he knew that day was report card day, and he was sitting at the table, and he had stacks of money in front of him. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy that I'm having this anxiety again. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, and I give him the thing, and I only get $60 to a teenager in early 2000s. Are you kidding me? That's serious pocket money.
Yeah.
I should have just taken that money and been like, you, and just been like, but instead I was feeling shamed that I didn't get perfect.
Yeah.
And that was a pattern in my family. They would pretend they were celebrating what you did, but instead what they were doing was just reminding you that it wasn't perfect, it wasn't good enough, it wasn't enough, it wasn't enough.
Yes.
So that was just over and over for me.
And sometimes I think, it's self-imposed too, especially when you watch your, siblings or cousins or whoever is around you, excelling in certain areas, and you're not excelling in that, and you're not, getting the praise or something like that. So you kind of put that pressure on yourself as well to do well, because you want, your parents or family members to say, oh my God, you're doing so well. Keep going. And sometimes things get lost in, the translation when you're raising your kids. So I can see it from both ends. As a kid myself, when I was a kid, I wanted that praise badly. I wanted my parents to say, you're doing really well.
I just didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't care about the praise. Just didn't want to get in trouble.
That too. I didn't want to get in trouble. I did not want to hear the lecture of, why did you get a D? When I know that you can do better than that. And it was that ingrains in your head, you can do better, you can do better. And it's but it's not, at least for me, when I think back, I didn't think I could really do it, but I did it. And
the constant tug of feeling not good enough, but still while you're doing it is very confusing. And I know that comes from an environment where we're not lifted up enough as kids. I know that's for me,
So that uncle that would pay you, do you know, did he do really well in school? If you don't mind. Okay.
No.
Because I was going to
And
say, my dad was always really, really good at math, always did really, really well, and he expected a certain level out of
right.
us, because kind of like wanting us to be like him type of thing. That's why I ask. I'm not trying to get too personal, but
No,
just,
that's a
yeah.
totally valid question. And listen, I could talk for hours about that uncle, my aunt, and that dynamic, because the unfortunate reality is, and this is, unfortunately, I can't go into too many details about this because there's still people in my family that I can't talk about this with. There's people that I'm no contact with because of this. And I don't know if they'll ever hear this podcast, so it may not even matter. But the unfortunate reality is, without going into detail, I went from one abusive home to another, and that's just the unfortunate reality. And
Okay.
it was like, when I may write a book about it someday. I hope that I have the energy to write a book about it someday, even if I never publish it or anything, because I just need to get it out,
Yeah.
because it was a systemic failure,
Mm-hmm.
and it was society and system protecting predators.
Yes.
Okay.
All I can say is that he was a predator, and that behavior was just another example of his predator behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you went through that, because no child, I don't care where
No.
you are, what color you are, what religion you study or, believe in, or none at all. Under no circumstances should a child be given
No.
to a predator.
No human should be,
No.
child or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that. And like, I understand that sometimes you get, especially like, when after World War II and all of those children were being born and they were very strict people. But you have to recognize that if you didn't like it growing up, why the fuck are you going to do it to your own kids?
That's exactly what was happening here, because you asked me if he did well. He did not do well in school, and he actually left school at one point, went to what was called Job Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you guys have heard of it.
Yep.
His family was very poor and very abusive. And when things happened when he did things that were inappropriate and they were reported, the system protected him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just an extension of the same system that had harmed him too. So it was very, I swear, I'm like, someday I'm going to dive into it, and I'm going to write about it. And even if I never publish it, and it just someday someone finds this transcript when I'm dead, let me just say it. This is the clearest way I have to say it without going into all the nitty gritty. It's absolutely related to everything happening in this country right now.
Yes.
Right.
Everything. Because when accusations were made, every single person living in that household should have been interviewed. And were we? No. So things like that were normalized. There are people that would hear my story and think, that's just an uncle trying to motivate a kid. No. That was an authoritarian tactic by a predator, and it was a pattern of behavior, but it was so normalized that if I had told anybody about it, which I did, I told my best friend all the time, yeah, like, we get paid for, and that's not actually the part that I think is problematic. I don't think there's anything wrong with motivating your kids with rewards to do well in certain circumstances.
Right.
The part that was problematic was the cut and dry, perfect, striving for this perfection. And we're not going to acknowledge how good you did, because all we can focus on is that you didn't get that $100.
Right.
And then add that with the fact that I walk in the door and your first interaction with me is about how much money I'm going to make because of my grades. Not how are you? How was your day? Like, there was but it was all under this guise of like, we're helping these kids feel safe. We're reacclimating them. But they weren't actually. There wasn't actually open communication. And it's just, it is absolutely still related to what I love that you mentioned it, because it is an intergenerational thing. How you mentioned like how people were raised, they were extending to us this, they were trying to treat us as if we were people who had feelings, but they didn't know how.
Right.
They literally did not know how. And so of course they couldn't recognize that I was a kid with undiagnosed ADHD struggling, because that was combined with the fact that I was also a girl.
Yeah.
What? No, girls are just so smart and proper.
Yeah.
And like all the ways that I was acting out ADHD, I was able to like kind of like hide them, and then I would get in trouble for them, and they wouldn't see it for what it was when I wasn't able to hide it anymore. Like one time, similarly related, my uncle came in my bedroom and was so mad because I had cleaned my room, but there were still stacks of books under the edge of my bed. But they were stacked up. I knew which ones had to go back to the library. I knew which ones were mine, and I needed to find a space for them. And guess what? My bookshelf was full. I didn't have anywhere to put those books, so I organized them the best way that I knew how, with what I now know is an ADHD brain, and he was so angry at me. But instead of talking with me about a solution, hey, maybe you need another bookshelf, or maybe you just need a milk crate or something. Nope, I got in trouble and got yelled at and was told to figure out what to do with the books under my bed. So it's no wonder that I then formed that into being this hyper individualistic kid that was like, well, I got to figure it out because no one's going to help me figure it out.
Right. And unfortunately, that mentality kind of leads to even more anxiety, being put on to us. Like sometimes it's actually pathological and sometimes it is pushed onto us because of how we were raised or, what happened at school versus at home. And when you're striving, you could have the perfect home life, be loved and all that stuff, and still come out with this because society wants you to look a certain way, wants you to be a certain way. And it's so loving to predators. Oh, what are you talking about? Bill Cosby did this. Or, oh, come on. Harvey Weinstein, he's so rich. Why would he do that? And, or Trump, they've got money. Why would they do those things?
Yeah, just look at him. He's got it together. He's got a career, family. People love him. What? That's exactly what was happening in this situation.
Yeah. And that needs to change. Because just because somebody has money, somebody, is wealthy or whatever, it doesn't mean that they can't do harm. And it doesn't mean that they should get away scot-free. Unfortunately, our system is set up to reward those that are rich versus, mega punishment for those of us that are poor. And it's time for that to change. And it is slowly changing because we're in the end throes of capitalism, which is what happens when, you move into fascism, is that capitalism is dying. So people panic into an authoritarian situation because they don't know what to do.
There's everybody that had some semblance of power under capitalism is losing it, and they're scrambling for that. And that's why we're seeing all these really scary things happening. And it's honestly it gives me hope that I have been able to find so much online community. And I hope that I can maybe find more in-person community, but it can be hard because of where I live. But it's literally the only thing that's going to save us. It's community and everything related to that. How we can support each other, take care of each other. I have said to my aunt on my dad's side many times, I wouldn't be able to do this without your help. And I know she's so sweet and kind and she sees the best in me and she means well when she says you would figure it out. But I don't know if she realizes that the main way that we figure it out is through our community.
Yes.
Right.
And that she's a lifesaver and part of my, when she helps me in any way that she can, whether emotional support or financial support, that's community care.
Yes, it is. And it's an important aspect that people realize that their family, if it's possible, friends, found family, keep them as close as possible. Lean on them, let them lean on you, kind of give and take. Don't count, well, I helped you 20 times, so you owe me. Don't do that shit. But it's important that we lean on each other and expand as much as possible, because the more people that we bring in, the better that we'll all end up surviving this horror show that's going to happen. And, maybe we can stop it before it gets to the part of where 6 to 11 million people of a certain type end up murdered.
And my brain keeps doing this thing where it's like it is going to get worse, but the worst it is hasn't happened yet. And I remind myself, we're already in some of the worst of it. Yeah. And it's important that we keep our focus on how we can be there for ourselves and each other. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I post reminding people, especially on my author account, because I'm taking kind of winter hiatus. I'm slowing down. Mm-hmm. It's wintertime. Yes. I'm not illustrating as much. I'm not drawing as much. I'm not writing at all. It's time for me to slow down. So I've just been focusing on sharing about folks in need and trying to get the views up on my page so that people who are in need can get eyes on their posts. Mm-hmm. And I remind people, I'm like, guys, this includes me, we have to take breaks. We have to rest. We have to take care of ourselves. And we have to be willing to talk about when we need help, which is really hard for me. It has been a process for me to learn, even if all the help that I need is for the person that I'm interacting with, which is usually my fiance because I'm a bit of a hermit, to acknowledge that I'm struggling in that moment. It has been so hard for me to do that, but we have to to be willing to say, I'm having a hard time. Everything's hard. And right now I'm really anxious. I don't know what you can do to help me, but I just needed to tell you.
Yeah, and that's the important part. It's not always about giving advice. It's not always, coming up with a solution. It's just, are you able to sit there and listen? Sometimes that's the cure. That can be the fix, is that you sat there and listened and just said, you don't have to say anything either. Whether it's text or face-to-face or on a phone call.
Right, just saying, I hear you.
Yeah, just say, I hear you. And, sometimes maybe we'll get through it together or we'll figure it out. Those little platitudes help sometimes too.
Right.
But it's about making sure, and, I've mentioned this in my rant too, but we also have to stop putting ourselves in a hierarchy. That is white supremacy right there. That's what Hitler did to all of the, disabled people that they decided to murder first as the, guinea pigs, so to speak. And then, moved on to the gays and lesbians and such and such and such. And we got to stop putting ourselves in that hierarchy. Not to say that some don't have it worse. So, of course they do. I understand that perfectly well, that some people are going to have it worse. Some people are going to have it better. Because we're individual. Right. But that's what makes us individuals, is that it's going to be different. But we have to come together and stop fighting each other whether or not we can park in a fucking spot. If you have the fucking badge, park there. But stop infighting and fight the stores that are limited in how many parking spots they put in. Fight the hospitals.
Be an entire section. We shouldn't be fighting over 3 parking spots.
Right. Yes.
I know that we digressed, but this is one of the things that that my autism focuses on, is this disability justice and how it relates to fascism and the fall of capitalism. This is one of the things that my autism and my ADHD have been obsessed with since I was a kid.
But the thing is that
hyper-focused.
If we're fighting each other over a parking spot, or, in the LGBTQ area saying trans, get rid of trans, and all that stupid shit, that's how we end up being divided and murdered, instead of coming together and realizing that most of what we have is because of Black people, feeding the people that were doing the sit-in for, 504s and the ADA to be passed. And, Marsha Blackburn and Sylvia, I can't remember her last name.
Why do I always forget her last name? I just think of her as Sylvia.
Yeah, I can't remember her last name, and I'm sorry. But
I'm sorry,
they were women of color. They were trans women, and they were the reason that the catalyst happened, so that we actually can wear what we want to wear, have short hair or long hair, have the ability to actually be out and not be arrested as soon as you say, hey, I'm gay. So if it weren't for those people, we would have not a damn thing. So we got to stop fighting each other and fight the actual businesses. And you'd be amazed that when we come together and fight the businesses, fight the government together, we can make a huge change.
Look at Target. Look at Target right now. They are scrambling. That's why they released those silly bags.
Yes.
Because they knew they had to have some kind of gimmick to get people in their stores. Yep. And you know what? It's actually kind of sad. I'm actually this is related to another topic that my fiance and I were talking about today. People I know that there is a possibility for us to enter a society where money isn't necessary, but I think that's further down the road than people realize. And all of these, but it's not far away. I don't think it's impossible. And I don't think that these places would necessarily go away. I think that money would just become decentered. And you wouldn't need money to get your needs met. You would just use money to get things that you can't just barter for directly. And I think these companies that are deciding that they're going to not care about what we care about are doing themselves a great disservice, because they're not going to survive this change. And any company that truly acts like what it is, which is an entity made up of humans, is going to have the chance to join us in this new society where whatever it looks like, whether people have universal basic income and universal healthcare, which is what I hope for, they're still going to need these corporations. And for some people, Target is the only store that they have. So I really feel for the people that are I live in Alaska and all I have is Target or Walmart. You can't boycott. We're boycotting for you.
Right.
You got to get your toilet paper. You got to get your cat food. You might even have to get some Targets have a grocery store in them. Okay.
Yep.
Target has been a staple for many people, and they're doing themselves and the rest of the communities that rely on them a disservice, because some people forget that more importantly than anything, these places are where people get things they need to live.
Right. And
People
that's
forget,
just true.
I just stop in Target to shop for fun. But that's not what it was. A place where you went to get stuff you needed.
Right. And
So
I totally understand those people who have to keep going to Walmart, have to keep going to Target or Amazon, because those are the only things that they have access to. And, please get what you need from them. And, and get yourself a little thing if you can afford to. You should have joy. That's the antithesis to authoritarianism and fascism is joy.
Right.
You can't have joy and those. They do not, they're mutually exclusive. I think that's the right term. And so you can't have one with the other. And that's the part that I think a lot of people forget also when they're talking about, we got to boycott this, we got to boycott that. And sometimes it's hard.
It is really hard, especially when you don't. We used to live. The town that I went to college in had a place like this. It had a little pharmacy, and it had like you could get stuff that you needed, but you could also go in and get a cheeseburger and a milkshake at the counter. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately,
it has since closed down since I was in college. And when I found out, I was so emotional. So I'm so happy to see people pushing to small business. I truly believe that the future of whatever America is going to look like, whatever socialist framework that we build, is going to include more of these small places that are meeting our needs. That we're going to go back to having a small town grocery store.
Yeah.
That like these monopolies. It's so funny because my brain just at this point just like rises in my brain and reminds me that this is related to neurodivergence, because there are people that care about these things and they want to be this pillar in their community. There are people that are like, I just want to sell you garden supplies. Like they want to be there for their people. And so
and I think there's a great way to do that. In our communities, if you have a doctor, maybe at some point we could reach back to bartering of some sort. Well, you know what? You fix my teeth. I will then, fix your fence.
I'll come over and repair your fence.
Yeah, I'll
weed your lawn,
do
whatever.
your plumbing, things like that. How we used to be, because we didn't become a society by being individualistic. We rose together because we didn't.
I gotta put that on a sticker.
No, please do. That would be awesome. But because I would be like, that was me. But we rose as a society because we cared for the least of us and showed compassion for the least of us and brought them with us, because they have wisdom that sometimes those of us that are, as able-bodied, neurotypical, whatever they're called, which I honestly think that they're actually, the minority of everything. And the real minority isn't focused on that. They're focused on division and all that stuff. But you have to be together. You can't have a society and not feed your poor, not house your, unhoused. You can't do that and still keep going forward. You will fall backwards and you will die.
It will fall apart, and it will fall apart for everybody. And this reminds me of how almost everyone in their life, if you live long enough, you're going to become disabled. And honestly, at this point, if you want to get old, you're basically saying, I want to be disabled and supported.
Yes.
Right.
I want to have. Guess what? Everybody deserves that.
Exactly.
Guess what? Everybody deserves the chance to live as long as possible in safety and comfort, and not have to worry about where their food or shelter is going to come from.
And you'd be amazed if everybody, let's say we didn't have a basic income, but everybody was housed, everybody was fed, didn't have to worry about that, didn't have to worry about insurance coming, at you to lien on your house or whatever. All of that was wiped out, and everybody was housed and comfortable. Can you imagine the output of productivity that would entail?
So much art, so many stories, so many ideas, so much innovation. We would just make strides.
Right. We would
Solutions to problems we didn't even know existed yet.
We would probably already have flying cars if we stopped fighting wars and actually invested in our people and made sure that they were housed and fed. And then if that's not on the table for them to worry about, then they can think of, well, how do I make a flying car? How do I get us to live on the moon?
Right.
How do I get us to live on Mercury comfortably?
Yeah.
Not that I want to, but all of those things could happen, could have already happened if we actually focused on reinvesting in our people instead of investing in one or two people here and there. I mean, we've got an astronomical over 2,000 billionaires now. Do you know
that many now? I was just wondering how many it was. I didn't realize it was that high. And I love how this is all related. I love how we started talking about neurodivergence, and then, I just love that because it demonstrates that everything is all connected.
Yes.
And that I just love that. I didn't know there were that many.
And some
of them have an obligation to society that they're not doing because they only have that money because of us.
Well, yeah,
right.
That is 100% right. You would not have, I'm sure people are going to come at me for this, but Taylor Swift would not have the fucking shit she has if it weren't for people.
If people weren't buying 6 versions of the same album because it came out in different colors with different album covers.
Right. Although I don't, no offense, but who the fuck does that?
I mean,
6 different album covers. I mean, come on, just pick one. Yeah, it is true. Pick one. You don't need the exact same album 20 times.
Yeah, it's getting when they're collector's edition. And I'm not talking about the Taylor's version stuff. That's actually one of the only things she did that I was like, good for you, girl.
Yeah,
because that rights to your own IP. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a no ethical billionaires. I'm definitely in that camp.
No. Not even Oprah.
Anyway.
Oprah's sitting on billions. So is what is that? Tyler Perry. Why do you need that much money? Honestly.
Yeah.
What you can't even live long enough to go through $1 billion.
Seriously.
But at this point, the moment they give any away, they gain it all right back to how much they have.
That's why it doesn't make sense to be a hoarder of billions of dollars. You will never spend $450+ billion in your lifetime, nor your children's or your grandchildren's or your great-grandchildren's lifetimes. So, you have enough.
These people have hoarded, especially Musk, have hoarded enough money that they can change things for so many people, and they just choose not. I can't imagine having that kind of being able to change the world for the better and just not doing it.
That's what I don't understand.
That's why I believe that disability justice is so important to social justice, because we're discounting an entire group of people that can and should be contributing to society, and not just because they can work, not just because of their productivity. In fact, in spite of their productivity, I'm tired of this idea that our worth is tied to our productivity. Guess what? Your worth is inherent. You're a living, breathing human being. And everything that I believe and everything that I want to be open to learning is because I believe that we have been taught lies about our value as people and what our role in humanity is and our role on this planet. I think that, first of all, we should just be spending a lot more time just existing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even people who love to create, I'm like, it's okay if you don't paint or draw or make a song. Like, it's okay to just sit and stare at the sun and the way the shadow dapples on the ground.
I wouldn't stare at the sun. That's not a real good idea.
Right, don't stare at the sun, stare at the shadows.
Unless you're Trump, you can stare at the sun, Trump. But
I love this though. That's what I believe. I think that it's all related to disability justice, and
yes, it is. Because there's so many mass disabling events when we have these wars that like the Venezuelan one that they're trying to start for whatever shit they want out of that country, and it has to do with either oil or the minerals. It's never ever about protecting those people, because come on, he released a big narco, so it's not a drug war. We're not fighting to keep drugs off of our shores. But it all is related, because as those things happen, when people get addicted, when that's a disabling event, when, people end up bombed that's a disabling event, because even if you survive intact, you're still coming out with PTSD, which is a disabling event. And we have to realize that all of us, even, like I said, even if you're 100% intact, we're still disabled. We're all disabled because we're sitting here watching our country crumble and bringing other countries down with it, because, misery loves company. And it just, sometimes it just gets so frustrating when you watch this and you're just like, how did you not see this coming? How far up your own ass were you to not see this coming? It's amazing. But anyway, it's frustrating, and they sit there and talk about it, how, I know this doesn't necessarily have to do with it, but they sit there and talk about it, how Republican women are hot. Well, gee, because they've all dyed their hair blonde. They've all put on fillers that, look ridiculous. They look worse than Barbie to me.
And they have this idea of what, like, everyone should look this way. Nope. No. I actively reject that.
I 100% reject that, because it didn't work for Hitler, and it ain't gonna fucking work now, because too many of us know it now and see it, and we're gonna keep raising our voices and saying, no, this is not okay.
Yep.
Enough's enough. And I might not live long enough to see it. I hope I do, but I really do hope that it's much better at the end.
I'm like, I know that it's going to take years. I get it, but I'm going to be here anyway. So we might as well do it, do the work.
Right.
And we're still figuring out what the work is. We're still figuring it out.
Yep. Just, it's a tag team, and do what you can when you can. But at the least, if you have your social media, shout out every once in a while. This is too much. This is not okay. And keep everybody on their toes about that.
I don't always have the words to say, hey, I know what's going on and I can talk about it. But I'm always, even if I don't know what to say, I share posts from people all the time, and
yeah, do that. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. Sometimes the picture says it. And, or, somebody else says it beautifully, because I don't always say it beautifully, because I get pissed off about it, and I'll say outrageous things, but, and I guess that's part of my charm. But it's those things that makes it
charm.
Shut up. And please don't make her have it come out her nose. But it's those things that help. Even if you can't necessarily boycott, because that's all you have access to, or, the Spotify thing, what the fuck, Spotify? So. It's ridiculous, but we can fight back, and we will, and we are.
Yep.
Can I bring it back to where we were like 40 minutes ago?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We're just going to keep going round and round in circles. That's
yes,
what we do.
But
that's exactly. We will talk. That's another thing that I've noticed real quick.
I have the time in front of me, so I know that I can't, that I got to get in a certain time. She doesn't have a clue. She just talks.
But it's true. We all talk in circles. We all come back around to, and, find those links that link everything together. And I'm sure you do this too, as, ADHD. It's just how we think. And autism, I think we honestly think in circles. And we're just like seeing the patterns, and we're putting the patterns together. Okay, now you can go.
Yep.
Your mental health. I think we've heard why you have depression and CPTSD. Did you get diagnosed with that around the same time you got diagnosed with ADHD, or did you get help prior?
I got diagnosed with that years ago, and when I was in college.
Okay.
And I started experiencing, it was actually, I remember, so crazy. You remember these defining moments, I had started to see an on-campus therapist. My mood swings around my menstrual cycle were really extreme. And it was actually, it's so funny, because you'll find support in the strangest places. Yep. But to this day, I struggle with feeling comfortable around men in medical settings. Like, I always prefer a female doctor if I can get one. But it was actually a man, an intern in the psychology department at my college that told me, that diagnosed me with PMDD. He was like, it sounds like you're dealing with PMDD, and you also have depression. So I started doing birth control for my PMDD, and it did help a little. But I realized that I was first depressed when, this is so interesting. I realized it, and this is when I really started talking more to the therapist about the depression and not just my mood swings. I was sitting in the student center. Obama was running for president, and everybody felt so hopeful, and I didn't feel it. To this day, I often will be like, I don't. It's partially related to politicians, but at the time I was also depressed. I was deeply depressed. I remember sitting in that student center and everybody being so excited, and all I thought was like, I don't even want to be alive right now.
Right.
Like, and I was like, okay, something's wrong. Like, because for all intents and purposes, I'm living the dream. I was the first person on my mother's side of the family that I know of to finish college. I wasn't the first person to go to college, but I was the first person to get my degree. But everybody dreamed of being able to do that, go to college and learn. And so I was like living the dream. Why was I depressed? And so I started, kind of doing therapy through college. And I saw a therapist after college as well, because it got, as often happens with people who struggle with their mental health, I graduated college and my depression was the worst that it had ever been. And I was struggling with poverty, and those two things going hand in hand were weighing me down, because I was like, I did the right thing. I went to college and now I still have no money.
Yep.
I don't even have to pay back my student loans yet because I just graduated, and my rent was only $210 a month at one point. Because now that was much easier. I wasn't as stressed. But then when I had to stop paying just renting a room in a house, I was starting to realize that my depression, while I think it would have been there anyway, I couldn't do fuck all about it because it was constantly triggered by my worry of money.
Right.
I couldn't actually give myself space to heal whatever was causing me to be depressed because it was constantly re-triggered by, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Do I have to ask my family for money? I'm working a full-time job. I went to college. Why? And that began my years-long process of like dealing with depression, but also wrestling with how much depression is related to how much we're harmed by these systems.
Yes.
Like, at the end of the day, it's hard for me to believe that in a system where I was cared for, that I would still be a depressed person. So yeah, I learned about it when I was in college, but it would take me years to even start talking about neurodivergence.
Right.
I just thought of myself as a depressed person. I didn't think of myself. It even took me years to think of myself as mentally unwell, mentally ill, struggling with my mental health.
Right.
Even though depression is a mental health thing, it took years for me to admit that it was a struggle and that it was just part of my life.
It's one of those things where like you hear the words and it's just like, okay, great. But you understand it outside of your own body. And it's like,
I know. Yeah, I know what that looks like for someone else.
Right. And you have empathy for them, but you can't seem to give yourself empathy because it's almost like, well, no, that's not supposed to happen because I'm supposed to be, taking care of other people, or I did it the right way, like everybody said. And I still don't feel right. So maybe I'm not grateful enough. And it's those types of things that, hit our heads, as stupid as they are. It just, you can't help it though. And then especially, like you said, putting the money aspect to it, that's like a huge depressing thing.
See, and I also all my life have struggled with my friendships.
Me too.
Struggled with relationships, communication, and that exacerbated my depression because as I came to realize that I was depressed, I realized, again, a years-long process, how shallow so many of my friendships were.
Yep.
And I graduated college and everybody that I was friends with stopped talking to me, except for like 2 people. And maybe 3 people, but one of them was like a best friend that would eventually decide she didn't want to talk to me anymore. So it was a strained relationship. And part of this is because I didn't learn how to be in healthy relationship with people. Our society doesn't really teach it. My family didn't teach it. But part of it was also because my neurodivergence was causing me to not be able to relate to people. I have felt separate, like I don't belong since I was a tiny child.
Yes.
I remember trying to make friends with kids in elementary school and them not wanting to be friends with me, but then not knowing, like, we're not taught how to establish those healthy boundaries, and we're not taught how to process our feelings when someone doesn't want to hang out with us. And people are allowed to not want to hang out with us. But all
No,
of
they're
this,
not.
like,
They must hang out with us.
no, they're not. Let's hang out with us. I didn't know how to navigate healthy relationships. I didn't know how to navigate healthy communication about not wanting to be friends with people. So when I was realizing that I was depressed, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. I didn't know how to talk to the people that were in my life about it.
Yes.
And so it's just like, as I look back, like, there's always a small part of me that's like, oh, of course you were depressed. Of course you were neurodivergent. How could you not realize that? And then the other part of me is like, because we're living in a society where you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, and that's why it's so easy to have depression for so many years and not realize that that's related to your undiagnoses, the things that you haven't been diagnosed with yet, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So yeah,
it's hard.
I knew about my depression for like a full over a decade before I had any idea I had anything else.
Right.
I honestly didn't realize I had depression until more recently. Like, it was always just kind of, it was, for me, the masking and the just keep going. You know,
it makes it easy to say you're depression. I'm just sad.
Yeah. And you kind of, in my case, I kind of ignored it and, you know, just let it go. And because I had things to do. I don't have time for this type of idea. And when I stopped and thought about it, it was just like the neurodivergence not being diagnosed really did affect me greatly, because I too could not really do friendships. Like, I don't always answer immediately texts. I don't care to sometimes, and sometimes I do want to. But it's almost like that feeling of wanting to be alone, but wanting to be alone with people.
I have to end the conversation here. We're out of time. But before we go, I want you to talk about your stickers.
Yes, please.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey,
It's
I appreciate
the
that.
little
Thank
shop
you
of
for spending so much time with me.
stickers.
Yeah, thank you for talking about my neurodivergence with me, and my depression. I love talking with you guys. What got me into stickers? I've loved stickers all my life, and as you know, I'm an illustrator. I'm a writer. And that's part of my neurodivergence is I can sometimes I'm focusing on my writing, sometimes I'm focusing on my illustrating, and I started my sticker shop through a third party about 3 years ago. And at that time, it went by the name of Nervous Magic. I named it after my cat that I had to put to sleep. And when I first started designing stickers, I wasn't sure what I wanted my style to be. But my first sticker was a watercolor painting and I love to create art that when you look at it, it makes you feel a relaxed comfort. It makes you feel like maybe you want to go to that place. And I was actually just testing out what a sticker would look like when I uploaded that painting. I was not even sure people would care about this painting. To this day, it's still my best-selling sticker in Redbubble and in my direct shop. And the little shop of stickers creates emotional support stickers that people can put anywhere, from sweet stickers that say thank you for being here, because I understand what it's like to struggle with the idea that you don't want to be here anymore, to watermelons, to my watermelons, to some of them are a little more sassy. I have one that says be kind or fuck off, which is one of my favorites. Also, it has become one of my bestsellers now. And the little shop of stickers was also inspired by all of the people who are creators and artists. It was named after the Little Shop of Horrors, one of my favorite movies ever.
Yes.
The story of both movies is so magical. The Howard Ashman movie is my favorite. I love Howard Ashman. Watch his documentary. I highly recommend it to everyone. But yeah, that's what the Little Shop of Stickers was inspired by. I wanted to create stickers for people who need a little emotional pick-me-up, whether it's sassy swearing or comforting sayings. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to eventually offer bookmarks and magnets as well.
Awesome.
And yeah, you guys can find me at thelittleshopofstickers.com. I'm also the Little Shop of Stickers on Threads and Instagram. I don't post on Instagram much, but that's still a great place to go if you want to look at pictures and videos of stickers. So
Excellent.
Yes, and pay attention to those stickers because they are awesome. I've got some on the back of my wheelchair because I love them and they're really cute. Being partially black, the watermelon really fits. But
Thank you.
I just have to say thank you for all of that you. Thank you for all that you have done, and thank you for the stickers. Thank you for joining us on Halloween. Damn it!
that was really fun. Thank you.
That was awesome, and thank you for talking to us with all of this, because, sharing, I have to admit, is sometimes really hard. Yeah, especially when we have a damn dog that keeps trying to shake everything. But we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
guys for
joining us.
having me. Yeah.
Anytime.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to The Othering Podcast by Mike and Dory. Please like and follow us on all of your favorite social media.
The Othering Podcast is produced by Loudcore Productions, graphics by Josh, and music by Jordy James.